One. Welcome back to OnPoint with Ben and Am. How are we doing, Am?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Ben?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. How's your week been so far?
It's been busy and the weather's got me all over the place, actually. I don't know if it's snowing, sunny or raining. I don't know what to wear anymore. So, not great.
Don't know what to wear?
No, because it's raining and then it's snowing and then it's sunny. So
Okay.
I don't, like, what do I do? What shall I wear?
And you
didn't bring an umbrella. You didn't bring an umbrella, did you?
I don't take an umbrella anywhere. I'm from Yorkshire, Sven, so I don't take an umbrella anywhere.
We're really lucky today to be joined by Sven Poppelmann. How are we doing, Sven?
Doing not too bad, thank you. We just had a rain shower 10 minutes ago, didn't we? And just managed to get indoors just in time. So dry, super busy, ran off my feet as usual, as are you both, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm doing good, thank you.
Oh, good. Quick story for you both. Have either, just to start this on a bit of a light note, have either of you done indoor climbing before?
No.
Only to impress a girl, and it didn't go well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Funny enough, I was doing it with a girl last night. I wasn't really trying to impress her, but I think when you're doing it with a girl, there's an element of trying to impress, right? So I did indoor climbing for the first time last night, and it's harder than it looks, right? It's like I didn't realise I live in East Grinstead, and there's this it's a cracking. It's on an industrial estate, and I didn't even know it was there. It's this massive indoor climbing arena, and it's like for all different levels. And yeah, I went and gave it a go, and it's quite. First of all, it's quite like hairy because you're not strapped into anything, and you end up climbing pretty high.
You're not strapped in.
No, it's like the surface, if it makes sense, is almost like a bit spongy. So if you fall,
you went bouldering, didn't you? You went bouldering.
Bouldering.
No, it's called bouldering. Well, but there was hooks to climb onto, and there was boulders. There's a bit of everything. Right. So anyway, it's one of those things where you use muscles you don't use normally, right? So I've woken up today and I can't grip like a cup of coffee because my forearms are just like relentless. So my big news this week is where everyone's been busy. I've been knackered from this bloody climbing last night, or bouldering as it's called. But I do recommend it. So anyone who's listening who wants to do something like quite exciting and physical and something new, I'd definitely recommend it. But enough about me and my bad forearms. Sven, can you give everybody an intro into yourself and your background and what you're up to right now?
Yeah, I can do. It'd be an absolute pleasure. So yeah, I'm Sven Poppelmann. I'm currently VP Engineering at Automata, where I've been for the last 10 months. I look after both the hardware and the software engineering teams. I've been in tech for longer than I care to remember or admit. I'm older and have more scars from it all. But yeah, I guess my dad started me. I was 8 years old. He set me in front of an old XT computer with 4.77 megahertz and no RAM or no memory, and said, "I'll show you up to arrays, and after that, you're on your own." And somehow that turned into an entire lifetime in tech. I suppose I've been in sort of London tech startups for just over a decade in a mix of sort of VP engineering and CTO roles. And I really get my kicks. So why do I do this? Like A, the pace, and B, just like growing organizations, but particularly growing teams and organizations and helping, people grow and learn, and paying forward some of the things that I learned.
100%. And I think, I suppose, on that, on that last point that you just made, startups, where one as well, you learn things that I never thought in a million. There's no amount of books I would ever read and think, oh, that will happen to us. But me and Ben and our business partner James have found ourselves in such moments where we can't even believe what's going on. So it's good. I find that a lot of CTOs and people, they like to stay in that tech startup community, and they'll go and they'll make their mark and they'll go to another startup. So that's really cool and interesting.
I think I spent 2 years for my sins. I spent 2 years of my career at an investment bank, and I will say it was really good experience, but I wouldn't ever go back.
Ben, were you an investment banker in Canary?
No, I was absolutely not. I was.
I think you were.
I worked for an investment bank as a software engineer on Fleet Street, and I was definitely not an investment banker. I'd make a terrible investment banker.
I'd be really just knowing you a little bit now. I'm not, just can't picture you in that suit going into a bank and doing some investments. But You don't know this kind of thing.
I'm sure I've got some photos of my dandy phase that I can dig out for you.
That would be great.
London's such a cool startup scene. Hey, I think like I'm lucky enough to work with so many cool tech startups, but I guess fintechs. There's so many fintech ones. Talk about like banking. I think it's like London's the fintech capital of the world. I think. And it's incredibly amount of different startup businesses we've worked over the last couple of years. I think Amardeep's absolutely right. You're a certain person to want to work in that startup phase. And when I'm speaking to engineers now, I think ideally everybody would like to work for a startup because the work that you're involved in has just got direct impact into how the company's growing, and you kind of normally away from a lot of red tape and politics. But it's really great for me and AMS to speak to somebody who's actually, ultimately built a career for working with startup businesses. So yeah, really impressive.
I do a lot of hiring. I speak to a lot of engineers who, they've maybe spent time in non-startup world, and particularly as I think some of those folks get a bit more experience, become a bit more senior, I think they start missing that being connected to what impact primarily, right? So it's like if you're a little cog in a big machine, it just feels slightly soul destroying. And kind of being able to bring that experience into a smaller business and helping it grow, that's just really satisfying.
It really is, and not just that, but you have when you join a startup, you get a lot more strings to your bow, because you don't just go in and do one job. You're all mucking in together to get something done. And I learned that quite early on in my career of writing bids for pieces of work, where we'll all just jump on a bid and we'll all put our heads on that bid and try and get it out there to the client. And I would never have done that in a permanent position, because I wouldn't have needed to do that, because somebody would be paid to do that. And I think it really broadens your skill set of how an organization is run. So, we definitely messed a few up. In hindsight, I'm like, we were never going to win that piece of work. Like, are we idiots? I definitely think back, but I would never have learned that, which takes us on to the next point, which is something I wanted to talk about today. And Ben, it'd be great to hear your opinion on this as well, because you're a veteran in your field of tech recruitment. But a failure culture, something that a phrase that Sven said to me when we first spoke, and I thought was a really good phrase, because I hear a lot of people saying failing fast, and I hear a lot of people saying, oh yeah, we really encourage you to fail, but I don't hear the phrase failure and culture put together. So it'd be interesting to hear initially your take on that, and then I will jump in and tell you all the times I failed in life and why I'm here today.
Oh man, I think I even interviewed at Automata on the back of being really open and vulnerable, honest about failures. And so one of the B2C startups, it was a grocery startup I worked in. I debriefed with the founder not that long ago, and I put my hand up and said, I see this as a massive failure. And it was interesting. He saw it completely differently. He was like, no, absolutely not. But nevertheless, I'm not going to be talked down. I'm not going to be talked off the ledge that quickly. And being really open and honest with Automata when I was recruiting, actually, that got a lot of respect. And a lot of sort of, they were sort of like, okay, well, here's someone who's, I'm not perfect, but someone's going to put their hand up when they do it wrong. And the fact that they were so open about that was really encouraging. And that really sort of, made me think this is somewhere that I could come and work and go and spend a few years. It's just that ability to say, look, I messed this thing up. And everyone sort of rallying around going, cool, well, let's learn from it and let's go from there.
Yeah, it's really, I find it really interesting, because there's so many dynamics to failure culture. There's are people confident enough to say they failed? So you're changing behavior. And then there's the other side of it, of the person receiving that sentence, I failed. Have they got the behavioral patterns to manage that? Because a lot of people don't. And when things categorically mess up, people are quick to point a finger. If a project starts to fail, or there was a catastrophic bug that took the systems down for a few hours or something like that, someone wants to apply blame. And I think that's why people are scared to say that. I've had loads of failures, but one that I talk about quite a lot is when I used to be as a lot of people know, a lot of our listeners, I'm hoping I'm speaking to hundreds of thousands of people right now, but it's probably about 50.
I used to be a teacher.
Used to be
trying to get at the same time as her because it's like, yeah.
It's important. It was like, it's a big part of my career. I was a teacher for 8 years, and I thought, and I decided to leave, and I didn't leave because I found it boring or anything. That I just didn't, I wasn't inherently happy anymore. So I left teaching, and everybody told me, oh, you'll be back. So it really motivated me to not come back. I kind of fell into technology, but the first job I got was at Sky in Leeds in their digital hub. And when I originally went to interview, I failed the interview, and I was seething. I was mad. It'd been like 8 months. I'd been waitressing. I was data analyst. I was doing so many things to just try and make a little bit of money. And I was mad. I was really angry. They called me back 3 months later to re-interview. And I was just like, I am not going to go in there and talk about a backlog. I don't know what a backlog is. I thought I knew it in the theory wise, but I couldn't articulate it. And I walked in and I was really, really honest with the head of tech that was interviewing me. And I was like, look, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a really quick learner, and I'll be really honest where I'm struggling, but I don't know what I'm doing. And he gave me my first job in technology. And he said it was based on my being so honest about messing up. And I said, I didn't even want to come back to the interview because I was embarrassed. And it was the best decision I ever made, of just being honest about how much I'd failed the interview and why I'd failed the interview, because I didn't know what I was doing. I'd applied for a BA role, knowing all the theory of what a BA does, but having no real life examples and clearly not being able to articulate. So I think it's really important. So now we encourage all our people, don't we, Ben, to just be honest if you've done something wrong. Like if you tell us you've done something wrong, we can correct it very quickly.
Was failure culture, or perhaps a lack of failure culture, like sort of a part of leaving, a reason for leaving teaching? What was that like there?
Yeah, I mean, you can't fail as a teacher. You're not allowed. It is, I think, to this day, the most underpaid and overworked industry that I've ever experienced. I think I ever will. I think, we every single person in the world can draw back to a teacher that they were really fond of, or a teacher that inspired them or motivated them. We all say that, in all walks of life. And the relentless amount of observations you're under, and you can't fail them, because if you do fail them, you might not get your pay increase based on like a ladder. It's not, you can't just go and negotiate your salary. If you fail the kids, they don't hit their target grades. There's no room to fail. And that's why I think there was a big exodus from teaching, because people realize I've got all these skills. I'm not allowed to fail. And if the one time you observe me, if I do make a failure, I'm put on a chopping board, or whatever that phrase is, and you'll take my head for it. People swear, like, get over it. If you say shit by mistake as a teacher, you're eating a lot, you won't teach again. And I don't think that's why I left. I think it was a big part of it. I didn't feel pressure. I feel like I was a very, very good teacher, but I wasn't going to learn either. If I can't fail, I can't grow. I'm just going to be stagnant, and I'll wake up one day and I'll be 50 years old, and I'll be retiring from my teaching career, where most of the kids are doing TikTok dances, and I won't even know what TikTok is. And I was like, nope. And I left teaching. And then since then, I've just repeatedly failed because I've went into a new industry. So I've got I had a big bunch of skills, didn't know how to use them either, didn't even know how to transfer them properly, and then just kept failing and kept failing and kept failing. But I was I was just hungry to learn. Every time I failed, I remember someone once telling me, using the word, in technology, they use the word Jason. You know what that is. I thought they were talking about a man called Jason. They weren't. I know that now. Do you know what I mean? And it was little things like that. And I would just, get it wrong, get it right, get it wrong, get it right. So I think it's really, really important. And I feel bad for the organisations that still fear failure.
The irony, of course, is, particularly because you work with children, is that the way we learn as humans, and even small babies, we learn through failure. I mean, imagine if as babies or as small children, we sort of tried to walk and then fell over because we do the first time, right? And then just, well, suck at walking. That's never going to happen.
Exactly.
And like, how do children learn to walk? They get up 100 times and they get up again and again and again, because they just have this like inexplicable urge to walk, and they just don't give up. And there's nothing in them that's told them that they should give up, right? So we have this intrinsic nature, this drive to not give up and to be tenaciously, driven towards solving this problem, which is I want to get over to the family pets or to the candy jar, whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. And not just that, but like a lot of old, I taught sixth form, so a lot of homework or classwork would be past exam questions, and what do I want them to do? I want to see where they're failing so I can help them better.
Yeah.
So I apply that rule into everything that I do. I don't want someone to come in and get it right every single time, because I don't believe you. If you're getting it right every single time, I don't believe it.
Bringing this into to software engineering, obviously I'm not a software engineer at all, but is this a challenge for a company where you're working with, if the hierarchy and the CIO of a business who doesn't understand why there's a project being missed, who manages that responsibility? Because I'd imagine with your engineering team, if there's a deadline being missed or there's an issue, it'll be on your head. In your experience, how do you manage that expectation of failure looking upwards?
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess I've been lucky enough to work in organizations where the idea of being able to fail is sort of baked into the culture of the business, right? And so there's a few reasons why being allowed to fail becomes important. If you want to drive the business really fast and hard, and you say that we're going to iterate our way to success, like a lot of businesses do, right? It's not that they don't fail. It's just that when they fail, they have systems and sort of safety nets to catch failure and to learn from it. And so I've been lucky to work in organizations where, failure is handled quite maturely rather than, being punished. Having said that, though, the buck's got to stop somewhere. And,
yeah.
I think, the one sort of truism, I guess, that I've sort of have always tried to apply is, the team gets the credit and I take the blame, right? Because ultimately I am accountable. I may have made hiring decisions, I may have made promotion decisions that have put those people in those bits of areas of responsibility, and they are responsible. And we will have discussions about, how that could have gone better. But look, ultimately this is only going to really work if you can stake yourself, and you can be held accountable for those things.
Well, that's a really good point when it comes to appraisals and things like that. So, like, a lot of the, again, talking from a completely different kind of viewpoint, a lot of the time where I guess I found I didn't realise until I had appraisals. So I think as I've got older, I'll be very open and honest if I've got a requirement that I haven't filled, or you always kind of trying your best, but I'd always be open and honest and say, look, Sven, I've let you down here, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of the times I was growing up, I didn't realise until I had an appraisal. And then it'd be like, I was like, crap. I'm like, I have, and then because that's the whole point of a good leader, to explain this is why you didn't achieve your goals, and you need to learn from this, so next time you do achieve your goals. But because I kind of grew up never really realising until someone told me. So it's a bit of a mind shift as well, I think.
There's two, in my mind, there's two really, really important bits around feedback, which is that you shouldn't ever tell someone something you're not willing to say to their face. So we just did a round of performance reviews, and now we do them sort of end Q1 and end Q3. And you should, we do a bunch of peer feedback and upward feedback and so on. And I always say, don't give feedback that you're not willing to say to someone's face. And then the second thing is that the feedback shouldn't be a surprise. So nothing that you tell that person should be a surprise. And that means that you need to, be a responsible and caring enough person to give people continuous feedback on an ongoing basis. You can't just save it up for the Q1 or the Q3 thing, and then say, oh, do you remember back in October, you did that thing? It's like, no, I don't remember. And like, why are you bringing this up now? Why didn't you mention it then?
Yeah, I want to take it to a more granular level. Obviously, when I worked with my engineering teams, I used to have I've worked with some really, really, really intelligent, brilliant engineers, and one of them once said something to me in my last permanent job. He said, I know how to write code. That's not the problem. But every day we're solving really complex problems. and I need to see where it fails. And I didn't really understand. And I was like, I don't really get it. And he was like, okay, cool. So I can write this big block of code. In fact, I can find the code on the internet and just copy and paste it in. Something will then break. I'll break someone else's branch or something like that. I then need to debug it, and I need to look through, and I need to find out where it's broken. That's the power in good engineering. But it was like, we need to be able to make those bugs. We need to have the autonomy and the capacity to break something in order to then figure it out and fix it. He was like, that's why you'll see engineers bashing out loads of code, solving some great problems, and then spending hours trying to debug something, or they start pairing on it. And I thought when he said it to me, I didn't really understand. And then when I started to see it in practice, and I thought, oh, that's why they've all jumped on it together, because they're trying to figure out that problem themselves. But actually, they're trying to figure out how they failed, is what they're doing. Someone's written some code and it's broken something, or it didn't get pushed to live in the way that they wanted to. It broke something, or it just didn't do what it needed to do. And they're all sat trying to understand and debug a failure. Not a bug. I don't think we should call them bugs anymore. I think we should call them failures.
I think that's great. We should definitely do that. Some of the best engineers I haven't sort of done a sort of exhaustive analysis of what great engineers are, like what are the characteristics of great engineers. But I know some of the strongest engineers I've worked with have spent part of their career, like some portion of their career, just doing bug fixing or failure fixing, you know, and it might not even be their own failures or their own bugs. But being on a support desk where, you know, it happens slightly differently now that at least the teams get the bugs rather than there being support desk. But if there is a sort of first line of defense or first line support where they do look at bugs, then people are just in the trenches looking at bugs for a couple of years. They've just seen, by the time they get out of there, they've probably got PTSD, but they've seen every single possible type of combat you could see, you know.
I always think about that. One team that I was a delivery manager on, we looked after a few products within the team, and we'd inherited those products. None of it was their code, and so I had to implement some sort of support role within the team. And what they did is they decided that they'd do it for 2 days, and then they were on a rota for every 2 days, but 7 days a week. And they said to me, because again, I was early in my career, and I told you I failed a lot. I said, I don't really get it. Why you can't just find the book? Like, you've been working on this for 2 days and now you're going to pass it to someone else. And I wasn't the nicest thing in hindsight to say. And he said, it's kind of like me writing a book, then giving it to you, Amardeep, and saying that there's a problem in that book, find the problem. And when he gave me a context, I understood. I was like, oh, it really is. You don't know what the problem is. It's somewhere definitely in there. Find the problem in the writing. And I was like, oh, I didn't understand it the way you've just broken it down just beautifully for me. But yeah, I'm trying to find someone else's mistake and then fix it, you know, in a style of writing that perhaps I'm not too comfortable with either. So it was, it's a really, really interesting concept. And when you said it to me, I've been like fixated on failures and failure culture, and I've not stopped saying it to the team at Amity. So, but I want to try and find practical ways to help people. So do you have any advice for anyone listening, but also for us because how do you do it? I always think about wanting to bring something into culture and stuff, and culture organically happens. But how do you, for a company, not necessarily yours, but for another organization who have been quite traditional in their ways, have you got any tips or guidance or advice for an organization to encourage it, or at least not get mad at it when someone fails?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think that if culture happens organically, and I think it does, particularly when you start a company. You'll have seen this in your company as you've started it, and you hire some sort of like either high performers or some really key. I've heard someone call it culture carriers. You know, they're just like the high impact people, or the people that care a lot, or you know, the people that speak up at the all hands every single time with a question or some annoying comment or something. You know, but there's always some sort of like net positive contribution. I think you can be really intentional about culture as well. One of the things I do, and I learned this from someone I hired back at the grocery startup, is to take the team through a process of defining some engineering principles. And what comes out isn't necessarily this awfully unique set of principles. It's usually, you know, you can go and find engineering principles of some of the startups around London and around the world, and they sort of repeat each other, after a while. But if you take the team through this organic process of defining what's either the culture that we have, and then B, what's the culture that we want to drive towards, and you have this mix of like present culture and then some of the sort of fixes and improvements you want to apply, and then you make that sort of slightly aspirational, and then you bake in something like failure culture, right? So what our principles are, besides automate the shit out of everything, which I think we have to, if we're going to sell automation to our customers, we should probably be automating as much as we can. The other, I think, principles that encourage or facilitate failure are things like keep it simple. So to your point about debugging problems, if the book is 1,000 pages long, it's really hard to find the flaw. If it's a 10-pager or a 1-pager, it's easy to find that flaw. So keep your changes really simple, make small pull requests, get those in really, really quickly. And then bias for action, right? So just decide already is actually what we've called that one, which is a bias for action. So even if you don't have perfect information, it's better to make a decision and act on it with imperfect information than it is to wait until you've done an exhaustive analysis. Just go for it, right? And implicit to that is, it's better to get it wrong, but have acted and you'll have learned about something, whether it's from a customer in terms of your product or some technical decision, than it is just to sit around going, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Just decide. Just decide.
It's I like that. I like the just decide. I think for my type of personality, at least, I'm not bothered. Like if I fail, I'll just say I'll laugh it off, even if I'm a little bit embarrassed. But you've also got that big, massive fear of failure that is in a lot of people. So helping them understand the behaviors that come with fear of failure and getting rid of those, unlearning those behaviors, or making them feel a little bit confident, because I think it's a growth mindset. And if you want to grow as a person and a human being, you need to be open to failure. You need to not fear it and stuff like that. And it bleeds then into all aspects of your life as well, because we spend the majority of our time at work. So inevitably people are going to see our personalities and understand the kind of human beings that we are. We can't, I'll struggle if I found anybody that is like, this is my personality at work, and then I'm completely different outside of work. And I always like to take, especially with our employees, them into their personal settings. And, one phrase I really don't like is difficult conversations. It really drives me insane. If I have an argument with my brother, I don't say to him, look, we really need to have a difficult conversation. We just talk and we figure it out. And I think it's based on how you do things personally. And so something I did with the culture, the failure culture, is tell me something that you did wrong at home. And I remember talking to one of our employees, and he said to me that he tried to make some new cuisine, and he was like, oh my God, I burned the pan. I had to throw the whole pan away. And I started laughing, and I was like, oh, so you failed? And he was like, yeah, I failed. I was like, okay, then what did you do? Did you buy a new pan? He's like, yeah, I got a new pan, read a few more recipes, and I was so determined to get it on. He was like, I made it 3 days later, and me and my girlfriend had a great meal. And I was like, failure culture. So like taking it personal for people helps them grow in their mindset, I guess, as well. I think
it's always been an interview question, hasn't it? Tell me your biggest failure and what have you learned from it and stuff like that. And I think at the same time, as a technical consultancy, a lot of the times we'll come into projects where, so they've failed, they're failing, they need additional help, they're struggling and or they need a project turned around or whatever. And that's a lot of the time when we'll come in. So it's interesting. I'm sitting here as like the non-techie, and I'm like, yeah, this is like an everyday, like I could relate to this in so many different ways. The projects we pick up, the people we hire, the way that we work. And that's actually an interesting one. I mean, I'm just kind of moving away slightly from I guess the subject we're talking about. I'm really interested for the recruitment side. When you hire engineers, I've worked with blue chip companies, I've worked with startup companies. Do you like to hire staff and engineers who have come from a similar background in terms of a startup organization, or are you open to people who can work in that culture? Because I think it's more culture driven than company, personally.
So yeah, it's a great question. I generally say that it's I generally think that it's easier to teach or help a person learn how to code than it is to help someone not be an asshole.
You've got the words out of my mouth, and I think you've taken them out of Ben's mouth. Ben says that a lot as well.
You know,
Arsehole.
so
Not arsehole.
and I don't know if we can say that on this podcast, but I think hiring for I know people, this is an overused term, and I'm so embarrassed to use it, but culture fit. So what is culture fit? What does that look like? And if you can be really intentional with what your culture is, which in our case, we've externalized it in the form of an artifact, right? These engineering principles. It's a thing that you can print out, stick on a wall, and everyone can point at it, and you go, that person's shaped like that. And that doesn't mean, it doesn't matter, where they've been or what background they've got or what languages they code in. But if they're shaped like that, then the probability that they are going to work out here is just much, much, much higher.
Yeah.
And so now, and just, I'm going to draw on about these engineering principles again and again, but those engineering principles permeate the recruitment process, for example, right? So when we do an initial chat, we do a technical screening. When we do a tech chat, all the engineers sort of ask questions and bias for, or at least look for answers that bias strongly towards those engineering principles. Keep it simple, evidence for automation, evidence for collaboration and caring, evidence for making decisions, right? And when you bake that into your recruitment process, it's just sort of like improving the odds that you're going to A, find those people, and B, that those folks are going to succeed.
And personally, I think that the points that you mentioned there can come from any background as an engineer. You can be working for a blue chip company. The reason I asked the question is that, and I'm somebody who will kick back and say, I work with a couple of startups, and if they're listening in, that then they know that I kind of disagree. But they want people purely coming from startup backgrounds, and I strongly disagree, because I think that they're taken out of the market, because a lot of the time, particular engineers maybe are frustrated in the larger organization they're in, because they can't get shit done because of different principles and practices within that company, but they know the right way to it, and they know how they want to do it because they've done it before or whatever reason. And that's sort of the appeal for those guys to go to for startup companies. But if I send a CV of someone who's worked at a Sky, they'll be like, no. I said, no, I've qualified this guy. Like, I'm telling you, this is why he wants to join a startup from a big blue chip company. So it's really, for me, whenever I speak to somebody within startup organization, I'm always really interested to kind of understand how they set their culture and how they attract their staff and everything else. It sounds as though it's principle culture driven, which is good, I think.
We try to, and we try to also, like in our JDs, for example, we list what those engineering principles are. So I think like interviews are artificial and hard enough as it is. I think you should give candidates all the necessary tools and information to succeed. Right? It's not, come on, it's not an exercise to trip people up. These aren't your like exam finals at school. This is about helping all of us succeed and optimize our time. And when you bring a candidate in who just understands that we're biasing for these things, then they can prepare and also bring evidence. If you find someone that just prefers sitting in a dark room on their own and solving problems for 3 months at a time, that's absolutely fine to want to do that. Exactly. But if that's all you've ever done and you want to do it different, and you want to get excited about that, or you're not like that, then come here and we'll tell you about it up front. You'll know that that's what you're signing up for, and just give it a shot.
Yeah, sounds a fantastic place to work. Another just real random one, because obviously Amardeep and Sven have spoken before today. This is Sven and I's first time we've met. I thought it was quite a funny story that Amardeep thought she was speaking to you in the sauna the first time you met.
Yeah.
Is this true, Em?
Well, what happened was, I
he didn't have his shirt off, did he?
No, he didn't have his shirt off. It was quite funny, actually. Me and Sven, obviously, we connected on LinkedIn, and we'd exchanged a few messages, and Sven had said, why don't we have a quick chat first? And I was like, yeah, cool. So we'd booked it in, but we'd clearly both just had a long day already. So when he got on the call, the first thing he said to me, so he opened the call, and it looked like he was in either some cool cabin in Sweden or a sauna. I didn't know where he was, but it looked quite cool.
Skiing in the Alps.
Yeah, in the Alps, yeah. And he got on the call, he was like, I really just didn't want to do this. And I was like, well, neither did I actually. Because we started it off quite friendly, I was able to be like, are you in a sauna? But actually, and if you don't mind me saying, or if you want to say where you actually were, I don't want to.
Yeah, and I think being really honest with each other up front as well, right, helped us have just a really like straight up conversation. It's like, I don't really feel like doing this, but should we? Yeah, it's like,
just do it anyway.
And you didn't even, and you were like, oh, and they was like, oh, thank God. Well, let's go from there.
And I was like, oh, I won't keep you too long. Don't worry, we can just have a 5-10 minute chat, and we used up the whole half an hour just chatting.
Oh, we did. We went over as well, didn't we?
Yeah,
we ran over as well. We did. Yeah.
So I live on a boat. I live on a Dutch barge. On the canals and rivers of London.
So
and
cool.
have been for 4 years. Yeah, it's cold in winter, if that's what you mean. It's freezing.
No, I said cool. Oh, no, I did not.
That was a northern accent. Cool. And it's like cold and cool sound quite similar sometimes in Aberdeen. But yeah, I guess it's both cool and cold in certain situations. Freezing. But it's amazing. And you're saying you get to move around then. So it's like you're not set to one location, are you?
You're not set to one location. Every time is different. You've got different neighbors. And sometimes you just don't get to stop where you want. So sometimes, I think particularly in the last sort of 10 years, the canals of London have become really crowded. It's become a really popular lifestyle. I think the housing market and other factors haven't helped, but people are keen to give it a go. They usually last a winter or two, and they're like, "Nah, mate, like central heating and flushing toilets do count for something." But sometimes you just have to keep going. It's so crowded now. You just have to keep going, and so you end up in a different place, and you have to be really flexible with your plans. And I love it. It's great.
I love it as well. I think it's a fantastic story, and especially in this kind of like post-COVID world where people. I'm very lucky. Amardeep and I are completely different. I have a house in Sussex with a garden, and Amardeep was in a flat in Camden.
I have a mansion in Northwest London. Come on.
Well, yeah, now, yeah, we're talking
call me out like that.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But it's one of those. But imagine if you're living on a boat and you can move around, it must have been really cool. So I wanted to jump that in at the end because I think it's just a really.
We'll have to do the next podcast from the boat.
Yeah, definitely. I'm game for that.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
I was hoping you were going to be in the boat, and there you are, sat in front of a whiteboard like a true VP of engineering.
Yeah, but still with the tape around the headphones though. So just keeping it real.
I'm getting mileage out of these headphones as long as I can.
So
magic. Listen, Sven, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy. Really enjoyed it. And listen, we're in the process of setting up a meetup in the summer, which, fun enough, I'm hoping will be an event. Without saying too much, I'm working on the finer details. Might be on a venue that actually overlooks Camden Canal. So if you can get yourself around on the boat, you can just jump off and come into the meeting. Might be quite cool. But listen, thanks again, and I look forward to catching up with you soon.
So great to meet you guys. It's been so great to chat. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.